Hi, this is John, and today we're going to talk about using a simple string setup to check the alignment of, in this case, a Mercedes S65. And the story with this is that I was driving a while back over the bridge and hit a pothole and actually blew out the sidewall of the tire. Got a new tire, drove it for a while, found I was wearing the inside of both tires. So when I took it in to get it aligned, I found that it was off by about a half a degree. Toe in, it was actually towed out by that much. So I just hit another pothole, did not blow the tire this time, but the question is the alignment still pretty good, or did I mess up the toe? So what I'm going to do here is use some simple strings to check the toe measurement on this Mercedes to see whether I need to take it in to get it aligned or not. I'll show you how I do that. I've got the car in the garage here, and I basically set up using things you find around the house, jack stands, two strings, one on either side of the car, going straight down, and I'll show you how we set those up in a minute. But I've got one on the left, one on the right, using jack stands, a piece of string, and then just some scrap metal that I had sitting around the house to act as a tensioner. And you can see the string goes all the way back to the jack stand in the rear. And then I've got a straight scale here going between the two for getting the distance between the two strings. There's the string going on the other side. The height of these should be about the center line of the axle, or pretty close. And then what I'm going to do is use a level here, and I'll show you a little bit more about this in a minute, to be able to determine the toe, really looking at total toe here, but the toe of the front two wheels. And that's really all I'm going to check with this setup. So here's the alignment report from the S65, sort of before and after last time. And down here is the toe for the front. And you can see here the total toe was minus 47 minutes of arc, so that's 60 minutes in a degree. So this was almost minus 1 degree, almost. If that was a 60, it would be minus 1 degree. And that means toe out. The spec is 14 minutes here. And when it left, it was at 12. You can see the tolerances here. You could do 14 plus or minus 6. So what I wanted to do is check to see, am I still within spec after I've hit this pothole, or do I need to go back to the dealer to get this thing aligned? So what we're doing is, here's the car. We're setting up a string on either side, and essentially what you're doing is you're measuring to try to center the car in the strings, or really you're moving the strings with these jack stands to get things even on both sides. So for this particular car, I got 4 3/4 from that center of the wheel out to the string on both sides for the rear. And then usually the front and the rear track is not the same width. So you can see here I'm at 4 1/4 on both sides. And what I do with this thin string is actually try to measure to the center line of the string. The string's maybe about a 1/16 of an inch in diameter. So as long as you're always doing the same kind of measurement, try to center line it, that's fine. And then the other thing you're doing is you're measuring the distance between the strings here. So it takes a couple of times going around the car to get to this distance being the same as this, and these are all even side to side. So once you have that set up, then you can use that level to determine what the angle is. So here's a little bit more detail on that level. Really simple. I just used a bungee cord, you can see here, going down through underneath here and back out here. And that kind of works pretty well. You end up having to move this up and down a little bit to be able to get it centered so that the string is close to being able to measure it. The other thing that's key here is you don't want the level or whatever you're using here to be in contact with the rubber. That's really not a very well-referenced surface. So what I did is I just used some scrap here to space this out from the wheel. You really want your reference to be on the wheel. So you can see here, I just happen to have these little pieces here, which were cut from some balusters when I redid the third floor, and was able to use them here like this. So this kind of holds it in there, and it's tight against there. So I can move this to the point where it's level. It really doesn't have to be level, but just so it's aligned with the string. And then I just use a steel rule to measure the difference between the string and the level. And I do that back here at about 44 inches or so because it's convenient. And then I go all the way out here to 2, right in here, and I measure it there. So I know I've got 44 then inches or so between, if I do 46 out here and 2 there. So then that amplifies the difference in the string dimension, and that allows me to then pretty accurately measure the angle. So here's how we calculate the angle then of the toe. So this little sketch here shows, here's my string right here, and then here's my level that's strapped to the wheel. So I'm measuring at 2 different places the distance in to the string. And in this case, this would be toe in because it's moved at the leading edge towards the center line of the car. And it's really just some simple trigonometry, which you may not have used for a while, since high school or something. But here we have the length, which I'm making sure that I measure it at the 2 inches and at the 46 inches. So I know the difference between the two is 44 inches. And then here's 2 lengths, and I just take the difference in the length right here, delta L there, over 44. And if you remember, this is like the rise over the hypotenuse, and that gives you the sine of the angle. So we just take the inverse sine, delta L over 44, and that gives us the angle. We can just do this in Excel really easily. It's a sine function. And that tells us the angle of toe for one side. So I just put those numbers in the spreadsheet here, and you can see like on the toe, front and rear, those are to the front of the level and the rear of the level, and then where I made them, and then this just goes through and you can calculate the angle using that inverse sine. So you can see I got minus 4.88 minutes on one, which means that that was kind of pointing out relative to the center line. The other one was 21.97 minutes, and if you add them together, it's really the total toe I was looking at because I don't necessarily know if I have my steering wheel straight or not. I thought it was pretty close, but clearly not. So I had 17 minutes, and then I thought, well, let's just see how accurate I am. I tried it again, sort of remeasured everything. I actually started the car up, moved the wheel to try to get it a little bit more centered, and you can see here, when I took the measurements again, I just sort of flowed through the same calculations here. I got 7:32, 9.77 minutes with a total of 17:09. So there's a little bit of difference in here in the decimal after the 09, but that's pretty darn close for 2 different measurements. So I think I'm pretty accurate. I figured if I'm within a 1/16 of an inch, say, over about 15 feet, that's about roughly 1 minute of arc, so I figure it's about maybe accurate to within a minute or 2. But the bottom line is that's within the spec for that car, which was supposed to be 14 minutes plus or minus 6. So bottom line is I'm thinking that I do not need to get the car aligned with this last pothole hit. Just a couple of other tips. What I ended up finding useful here was with this rule that goes all the way across the width, which you have to do this at the front and the back. I ended up taping 2 rulers together, and that way I could span the whole distance all at once, and then use this bucket here just to kind of keep the thing propped up, and then that way I can be continuously checking things here to make sure that the string is in the right spot, as I'm also checking the distance into the axle. And what I was using was a steel rule here to measure the distance from the string to either to the ruler, to the level, or to the axle. And this kind of a steel rule works pretty well. It really doesn't matter what units you're using, if it's metric or English. The main thing is you just want to try and get it as accurate as you can. So if you have any questions, or if you want that spreadsheet, I can send me a comment and I'll email it to you. It's pretty straightforward. Once again, just use this to check the toe measurement. But with these low profile tires, hitting a pothole, you can see there they're 35s. Hitting a pothole is a pretty violent event. It was enough to knock the sunglasses off of my sunglasses case up there, and it was almost like an explosion went off. But what we see here with the measurements is that the alignment is still good. Thanks for watching.